Jessica Moore had followed the same morning routine for nearly a year. Wake up at 6:30, fix Lily's tiny ponytail, pack a pink lunchbox with apples and peanut butter, then drive the short 5-minute stretch to Little Sprouts Daycare in suburban Portland. That Wednesday, everything felt normal. Lily had just turned 2 a week ago and was beginning to say full sentences. As Jessica buckled her into the car seat, the toddler giggled and sang off-key to a cartoon theme song playing on the radio. Nothing seemed out of place, not even the oddly quiet streets, or the slightly distracted woman at the daycare front desk. When they arrived, Jessica crouched down to Lily's level and whispered, "Be good for Miss Tanya, okay? Mommy loves you." Lily nodded, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny, then waddled into the playroom without a fuss. It was an ordinary goodbye, warm, routine, uneventful. Jessica didn't know it would be the last time she ever saw her daughter in that life. She walked out the door with the same calm she'd felt every morning before. Nothing warned her of what was about to unravel just hours later. At 11:04 a.m., Jessica's phone rang while she was typing up reports in her office cubicle. The caller ID showed Little Sprouts. Expecting maybe a fever or a scrape, she answered casually until the voice on the other end stammered her name with panic. "Jessica, you need to come. Lily's missing." Confused, she asked, "Missing? What do you mean missing? Where?" The voice grew more frantic. "She was playing. Then she wasn't. We've checked everywhere. The police are on the way." Jessica's stomach dropped. Time slowed. She didn't remember grabbing her keys or running to her car. Just the sensation that the air was suddenly too heavy to breathe. By the time she arrived, the daycare was already surrounded by squad cars. Officers were interviewing staff, while some combed through the sandpit, toy sheds, and nap rooms. Jessica sprinted past the caution tape, shouting her daughter's name. "Lily, Lily." But all she got were blank stares and pitying glances. Inside the playroom, Lily's bunny still sat in the corner alone. A single sippy cup lay overturned near the doorway. No broken windows, no forced entry, no witnesses. It was as if the little girl had simply vanished into thin air. The daycare's security camera system hadn't worked in weeks. None of the nearby shops had clear footage of the outside play area. There were no strangers reported in the area. Jessica couldn't understand how her daughter could disappear in a building full of adults and children in the middle of the day. The news spread fast. Within hours, the story was on local television. 2-year-old girl abducted from local daycare, no leads. But what haunted Jessica the most wasn't the silence, it was the absence. A room where laughter used to echo was now filled with nothing but questions. And that empty bunny staring back at her within hours of the initial report. Lily's disappearance turned into a full-scale investigation. Portland PD mobilized everything they had: search and rescue teams, K-9 units, helicopters, and patrol officers canvassing a 5-mile radius around the daycare. Volunteers joined in, passing out flyers with Lily's face on them, big brown eyes, dimples, and a small freckle just above her left eyebrow. Her photo was on street poles, supermarket windows, and gas stations. Jessica barely slept. She joined the search, yelling Lily's name until her throat was raw. But every search party returned with the same answer: nothing. Not a shoe, not a piece of clothing, no trail at all. The first theory investigators explored was that Lily had wandered off. But that didn't make sense. The daycare was surrounded by a high wooden fence, and its back gate was locked at all times. They examined the possibility of a custodial kidnapping, but Jessica had no family in town and Lily's father had been absent since before she was born. Neighbors were questioned, staff were interviewed, and parents were asked for any suspicious observations. Days passed, but no new leads surfaced. It was as though someone had plucked Lily out of reality and left no trace behind. Detectives scoured nearby surveillance footage from businesses and traffic cameras, hoping to spot a strange car or an unfamiliar face outside the daycare. But everything they found either led to dead ends or time gaps. Then came the cruel wave of hoax calls, people claiming to have seen Lily in distant towns, demanding money for false tips. Jessica answered every one of them, desperate and hopeful, only to have her heart crushed again and again. The emotional toll was unbearable. The FBI eventually stepped in, labeling it a possible abduction case and placing Lily on the National Missing Child Registry. As weeks turned into months, public interest slowly faded, media coverage dried up, and the volunteers stopped showing up. Jessica refused to give up. She made her own flyers, knocked on doors, and hired private investigators when the police ran out of resources. She visited psychics, hoping for even a hint of Lily's location. Her house became a shrine to her daughter, walls covered in news, clippings, maps with pins, and a table filled with candles and stuffed animals. Every day that passed without a clue deepened the silence and sharpened the ache. Despite the overwhelming despair, Jessica kept one ritual alive. On the 2nd of every month a day, Lily vanished. She returned to the daycare's entrance. She'd stand by the fence, staring into the play area, as if, somehow, somewhere, Lily would come toddling back. But each visit ended the same. No sign, no clue, and no Lily. The police called it cold after 1 year. Jessica didn't. In her heart, she felt something deeper than pain, an instinct that her daughter wasn't gone, just hidden. But by who and why remained the haunting mystery. It was a rainy November afternoon, 18 years after the day Lily vanished. Jessica had grown quieter over the years, her once vibrant spirit dulled by unanswered questions. She still lived alone in the same small house, unwilling to let go of the memories tied to each room. That day, she had gone for a routine dental appointment, the kind of mundane task that usually passed without thought. Sitting in the cold waiting room, with nothing but the buzz of fluorescent lights overhead, she reached for an old stack of magazines on the table. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, just something to pass the time. As she absent-mindedly flipped through the glossy pages of a European fashion magazine, her eyes landed on a perfume ad, and then her world stopped. The model in the ad had a face that was both painfully unfamiliar and heartbreakingly known. The same almond-shaped eyes, the same freckle by the left cheekbone, the same subtle birthmark that only Jessica knew had formed right after Lily's first birthday. Her fingers trembled as they hovered over the page. The model's name wasn't listed, just the name of the perfume and a slogan, "Become who you were meant to be." Jessica's heart pounded. Could it be her? Could it really be Lily after all these years? Logic told her it was impossible, just a freak resemblance, maybe, but a mother's instinct screamed otherwise. The more she stared at the photo, the more the little details screamed out at her. The curve of the jawline, the way her eyes didn't fully smile, the slight slant of her right eyebrow when she looked directly into the camera. This wasn't just a model. This was her daughter. Jessica's chest tightened. She tore the page from the magazine without even asking permission, clutching it like it held oxygen. She drove home in a daze, her hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, the moment she stepped through her door. She dug through the old photo albums, stored in her attic, the ones she hadn't opened in over a decade. One by one, she spread out photos of Lily on the kitchen table. The birthday parties, the daycare, art projects. That last picture before she vanished, miling in front of the daycare door, holding her bunny. Then she laid the magazine page beside them. It was like watching time bend, 18 years apart. And yet it was her dot. Jessica scanned the ad into her computer and ran it through facial comparison software online. The result wasn't exact, but the match score was high enough to raise every red flag. She didn't know where to begin. Who was this girl now? Where had she been all these years? Why was she modeling for a European perfume brand? And most importantly, did she know who she truly was? Jessica's hands hovered over her keyboard, not knowing that this one image, this fleeting moment in a magazine, would be the first real clue in a mystery that had haunted her for nearly 2 decades. Jessica became consumed. That perfume ad didn't just haunt her, it ignited her. She stared at the page like it was a message from the universe, a thread dangling after years in the dark. She had nothing but a name scribbled in tiny print beneath the brand's copyright info, photographed by Marcel Reynaud for La Lumiere Agency. It wasn't much, but it was a lead. She started there, Googling every possible combination of the photographer's name, the agency, and anything related to perfume campaigns in Paris. The deeper she searched, the more driven she became. Sleep vanished, meals were forgotten, her world narrowed to a glowing screen and one question: is she still out there? After 2 days of digital digging, Jessica hit a breakthrough. She found an archived online article from a niche fashion blog that referenced the ad campaign. The piece briefly mentioned a new rising star in French modeling, a young woman named Alina James, recently signed with La Lumiere. The accompanying photo was unmistakable. It was her. Lily. Now Alina was real, alive, and walking under a name she'd never known. Jessica's heart raced, torn between relief and disbelief. But new questions flooded in. Had Alina been told she was adopted? Had she grown up believing a lie? Was she even safe? Jessica reached out to the modeling agency under her real name and was instantly stonewalled. They refused to confirm or deny Elena's identity, citing privacy policies. She tried calling, emailing, even messaging photographers who had worked on the campaign. No one responded. So, Jessica changed tactics. She created a fake persona. As a fashion recruiter looking to scout new talent, with a borrowed French address and a convincingly professional tone, she reached out again. This time, the agency responded. They offered a press kit and a tour date. Elena was scheduled to appear at a private runway event in Paris in just 2 weeks. Jessica drained her savings, booked a flight, and packed a bag with everything she had left of Lily baby photos. The old bunny toy, hospital records, and the torn page from the magazine. Her hands trembled as she boarded the plane. 18 years of searching, aching, hoping, and now, maybe, she would see her daughter again. But she also felt a growing dread. What if Elena didn't recognize her? Worse, what if Elena had no idea she had ever been taken? Arriving in Paris, Jessica checked into a small hostel near the fashion venue. She spent her days watching interviews of Elena online. Her accent, her mannerisms, her expressions. In one clip, Elena giggled softly while brushing her hair back with her fingers. Jessica gasped. Lily had done the exact same thing when she was nervous. This wasn't coincidence anymore. It was truth screaming to be heard. But Jessica knew, she couldn't just walk up to her and declare, "I'm your mother." If Elena had been raised under false memories, the truth would shatter her. Jessica needed proof, undeniable, scientific, legal proof. And that meant one thing. DNA. Jessica had never felt fear and hope so deeply tangled. She was now just feet away from the young woman she believed was her missing daughter. At the Paris Fashion Gala, lights flashed and music pulsed through the venue. Elena James walked the runway in a silk gown, exuding elegance and confidence. But to Jessica, she was still Lily, the baby who used to grip her finger while falling asleep. Tears welled in her eyes as she watched Elena pose for the cameras. But this moment wasn't for reunion. It was for evidence. Jessica stayed hidden among the crowd, snapping photos, her hands trembling. She needed a DNA sample, and she needed it fast but cleanly, without causing suspicion. After the show, she followed the backstage crowd at a distance, keeping her eyes fixed on Elena. Minutes later, the model stepped outside, escorted by a handler, and lit a cigarette. After a few puffs, she flicked it onto the pavement and walked away. Jessica's heart pounded. Once the coast was clear, she darted forward, picked up the still warm filter, and carefully sealed it inside a plastic bag. It was risky, maybe even insane. But it was all she had. That tiny scrap could be the bridge between decades of pain and long-awaited answers. Back in her hostel room, Jessica couldn't sleep. She stared at the bag for hours, too afraid to send it off, too scared not to. The next morning, she contacted a private international lab that offered discreet testing. It was expensive, nearly $2,000, but they agreed to expedite the process. She included her own hair sample, labeled everything meticulously, and shipped the package off with shaking hands. The next 5 days were the slowest of her life. She barely ate, barely moved. Her entire existence narrowed to one number, 99.9%. That was the only result she would accept. When the email finally arrived, Jessica could hardly breathe. She clicked the attachment and scanned the report. There it was. In black and white, probability of biological relationship, 99.97%, parent-child match confirmed. Her knees buckled, the room spun. 18 years of agony, loneliness, and unanswered prayers proven by a cigarette butt and a strand of hair. Elena was Lily. Her Lily, the little girl who vanished from daycare, without a trace, had grown into a stranger with a different name and a glamorous life. And now Jessica faced an impossible decision. How do you tell someone they've been living a lie? As the shock wore off, Jessica began crafting a plan. She couldn't just barge into Elena's world and declare the truth. If Elena had been taken at 2 years old, she likely didn't remember anything about her real past. Her captor, whoever they were, had probably rewritten her childhood, turned themselves into a loving parent figure. Telling her the truth could devastate her or worse, drive her away. But Jessica also knew one thing. Silence was no longer an option. The truth was out, and now, the hardest part began, not proving Elena was her daughter, but helping Elena believe it. As Jessica continued, piecing together the fragments of her daughter's stolen life, she uncovered a dark and calculated deception beneath the glamour of Elena's public image. Digging through international archives and missing persons databases, she came across a familiar name that sent chills through her spine: Marina Duval. Marina had been a quiet, soft-spoken daycare assistant at Little Sprouts, the same woman who was mysteriously absent the day Lily disappeared. Jessica remembered her now blonde, polite, always watching the kids but rarely speaking to the parents. Jessica hadn't thought twice about her back then, but Marina had vanished the same day Lily did. And no one had looked hard enough. Jessica's hands trembled as she read an old report. Marina had fled the country using a fake Canadian passport. Authorities had failed to link her to the disappearance due to a lack of motive and evidence. But now, everything aligned. Photos from years earlier showed Marina in Italy, then in southern France with a toddler by her side. The girl's face had been blurred out in public records. But Jessica didn't need the photos to be clear. She knew. Marina had stolen Lily and raised her under the name Elena James, feeding her a lifetime of lies while hiding in plain sight across Europe. The realization was devastating. Marina hadn't just taken Lily, she'd erased Jessica from her daughter's life. She had constructed a false history, likely telling Elena she was orphaned or unwanted, manipulating her into believing the only person who ever loved her was the woman who had actually abducted her. Jessica's heart ached, not just for herself but for Elena. She imagined the confusion, the betrayal, the collapse of identity that would come when the truth surfaced. How do you convince someone that the person they call mother is really their captor? How do you pull apart nearly 2 decades of brainwashing without breaking them? Jessica started compiling everything: news articles, daycare employment records, airline logs, and most importantly the DNA results. She created a digital file with photos from Lily's childhood, cross-referenced with Marina's travel history. She even recorded a personal video, tearfully speaking to Elena directly, in case face-to-face contact became impossible. But part of her feared the worst. What if Elena didn't want to know? What if she was too loyal to Marina to believe anything else? After all, Marina hadn't just stolen her daughter, she had rewired her reality. Then came another twist, one that Jessica hadn't expected. She found a recent blog post written by Elena for an independent fashion magazine. It was a short, emotional piece about childhood, memory, and a feeling of emptiness she couldn't explain. One passage struck Jessica like lightning. "Sometimes, I dream of a purple stuffed bunny, and I don't know why. I never had one growing up, but it always feels like it was mine." Jessica clutched her chest. That was Lily's toy. She'd kept it all these years, Elena's memory buried deep, starting to leak through. The truth wasn't just coming, it was already knocking at the edges of Elena's mind. The day Jessica finally came face to face with Elena was nothing like she had imagined for all those years. There was no dramatic reunion, no instant recognition, no tearful hug. It happened quietly, behind the glossy curtain of the fashion world. In a cafe across from the venue where Elena was scheduled for another runway shoot, Jessica sat at a corner table, nerves pulsing like electricity through her body. She watched as Elena entered, tall, graceful, beautiful, and unknowingly carrying 18 years of stolen identity. Jessica stood, heart pounding, and whispered, "Lily." The young woman stopped in her tracks, confused, eyebrows furrowed. "I think you have the wrong person," she said softly. Already turning to walk away, Jessica quickly placed a photo on the table. An old image of a 2-year-old girl holding a worn-out purple bunny. "That's you," she said. "Before they changed your name. Before they told you I didn't exist." Elena froze. Her hands trembled as she picked up the photo, studying the tiny child. "Why do I know this?" she murmured. Jessica gently slid over more baby pictures, the DNA report, a copy of the missing persons poster from 18 years ago. She didn't press, she didn't demand, she just waited, her eyes begging for recognition. But Elena only grew more distant, eyes filling with panic. "This is insane," she whispered. Before bolting from the cafe, Jessica didn't chase her. She knew it would only make things worse. Instead, she left a flash drive behind with the video she'd recorded speaking directly to Lily, telling her about the day she was born, the way she used to giggle at bedtime, the silly songs they sang on the way to daycare. She spoke as a mother who had lost everything but never stopped hoping. It was raw, honest, and filled with the kind of love no one could fake. She also included legal documents, evidence tying Marina Duval to multiple aliases and locations, enough to prove that everything Elena had believed was based on lies. Days passed, no response. Then, at 3:14 a.m. on a Thursday, Jessica's phone buzzed. It was an international number. When she picked up, No one spoke at first, just a soft, shaky breath on the other end. Then came the words that shattered her. I remember. The bunny. I remember your voice. Jessica's knees gave out. Alina was crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a child trying to understand a world that had suddenly broken apart. She told me you didn't want me, she whispered. That you gave me up. Jessica sobbed, barely able to speak, finally managing. I never stopped looking for you. But the road ahead was far from clear. Alina was emotionally torn, caught between two worlds. The woman who raised her, Marina, had been her entire reality for nearly 2 decades. She had cared for her, supported her dreams, taught her everything, but had built it all on an abduction. Now Alina was left with the unbearable task of separating love from truth, memory from manipulation. Jessica knew she couldn't force her to choose overnight. She would have to be patient. But for the first time in 18 years, her daughter knew the truth. And the silence between them had finally been broken. In the months that followed, the pieces of Elena's identity slowly began to realign. Therapy sessions brought buried memories to the surface, fragments of lullabies, birthday candles, and a mother's warm embrace she hadn't known she'd lost. While the journey to healing was far from over, Alina began building a relationship with Jessica, tentatively at first, then with growing trust. The woman who had once been a stranger in a cafe became something more. Marina Duval was never found. She had vanished without a trace, just like the day she took Lily. But the web of lies she left behind could no longer hold. Alina had reclaimed her past, her name, and her truth. And Jessica, after nearly 2 decades of unimaginable pain, was no longer searching. Some stories don't end with arrests or justice served. Some stories end with recognition, with the silent power of a daughter whispering, I remember you. And sometimes, the first step toward healing comes not with a breakthrough in court, but with a page torn from a fashion magazine and a mother who never gave up. Because no matter how many years pass, a mother's love doesn't forget. And in the quietest moments, the truth has a way of finding its way home.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.